All right, on this episode of the Built to Hunt podcast, I have a good friend of mine, Bob Fromme, also a longtime business associate. We've worked together in the archery capacity for, a dozen or so years. Couldn't get him to buy product from us early on in our relationship, but we finally got the margin sharpened up enough.
That's got to have margin. You always had a good product.
Yeah. So anyway, no, all joking aside, Bob's a great friend of mine. On today's episode, we're going to talk about all things archery, and that sounds like a pretty optimistic
That narrows it down.
Yeah, it sounds pretty optimistic, but realistically, there's probably no better qualified candidate to have on to talk about this. Bob, you've owned a pro shop, I believe, since 1981.
81, I started retail when I was a marketing major at San Diego State. I worked in a pro shop in San Diego from 81 to 83. Then I moved up to Orange County. I owned my own stores from 83 to 93 in Orange County at 𝗙cie Archery.
Yep.
And then I moved back to San Diego, which is home, and started up performance archery in 94 till present. So this July it'll be 27 years as performance archery.
Yeah, so like I said,
been a long haul.
You could argue there's not anybody more qualified. I know you sell north of 1,000+ bows a year. You see it all from trad to entry-level people to people who have the highest level goals possible in archery, whether it be in target or hunting goals. And we'll talk a little bit about your own personal stuff here too as we go on. But basically, we want to cover kind of the progression of the typical archery, typical archery progression. And included in that, we are going to talk about target panic. That's a buzzword. Nobody likes to admit that we all have that. I'm a big fan of saying that everybody has it. I call it performance anxiety instead. It doesn't sound as scary. But at the end of the day, I think you have a really good handle on how that progresses. Like I think you were talking earlier how that goes. So walk us through like the typical archery progression. Those of you who are archery hunters on the podcast are at some stage in this progression, I would argue, right?
Yeah, I would say that we're kind of going to probably, because this is a hunting type oriented business, and that's where most of our customers are, and it's obviously the biggest part of our business is hunting. So we'll just kind of keep it focused down into that. But getting the proper equipment obviously is really important, and having a selection of the best products. So I've always taken a lot of pride in pretty much having all the best options, usually at least 2 bows in each price point, and carrying the best brands, and depending on what the person's budget is. So you start there, and then you obviously have to fit it to them. And what their purpose is going to be. If they're just recreational shooting or recurve or whatever, that's fine too. That's a whole different story. But we're going to focus on hunting right now because we only have whatever time, and that's
right.
What we're passionate about, right?
Yep.
If a guy's coming in and he wants to buy top-notch equipment, we're going to show him, depending on his physical size. If he's 6'3", we're not going to show him a 27-inch axle-to-axle bow.
Right.
We're going to give them something longer. So we get something that's going to be forgiving especially if they're newer, and overall a bow that's more forgiving and accurate in a hunting situation is really going to produce the best results. Because it's different standing on the range in your flip-flops and shorts in the summer and trying to squeeze the shot off at a known distance than it is with,
a rutting bull elk at
screaming as he's coming in,
yards.
trashing trees. And as closer he gets, the more messed up you get. And you got to remember to breathe and all that stuff. But getting the equipment right, draw length, bow design, peep sight. We actually have all of our bows set up with arrow rest. They're paper tuned. I've got really good techs. All my employees are first class guys.
Yep.
When I hire somebody, I get really good people. They have to be passionate about archery. And then I got to be able to have paid them more than where they were making before, so I keep them for a long time.
Yep,
retention. If I can't keep them, then it takes me 6 months of investment to get them really kind of up and running and really useful.
Right.
And then as the business has progressed, we've added some other really nice perks. Like this year I added health insurance and profit sharing, some other stuff to really keep my good guys, which I have an excellent staff. So whoever you get at our store is going to be really proficient. They're going to sell, give you the best option at your price point. We're going to have the bows set up, they're tuned, they're sighted in. We adjust the draw length and weight so the customer can shoot it. Then we go to the range. I've got 16 lanes on the indoor range. We start out 10 yards, get them the basics, get them on the target, make sure the bow fits them. And once they're shooting that bow sighted in at 10 yards, which most of them are pretty much right when they get them, we give them another option. So they have 2 options. We're not just, you got to buy this or nothing else, because that's what we shoot.
Typically,
we try to
a
keep it open.
Price point option, you mean?
Yeah. So whether it's a $500 package, $799 package, usually when they get over that, then they're buying the high-end bows at $1,100, $1,200, an aluminum riser. And by the time they get all the accessories on there, they're going to be out the door $17, $18. If they're going to need a target and a case and some other stuff, they're going to be $2,000. Yeah. We're telling them up front so they're comfortable, and they end up shooting something that they're going to be able to afford.
Right.
And not be sticker shock, when they get home and or not in 6 months wish they would have upgraded.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Now let me interrupt real quick there, because the value of a good pro shop, I worked in the archery industry for 14 years as well, and the value of a good pro shop cannot be overstated. Like, I was at a Total Archery Challenge in Texas just recently, and I watched a guy come up to the line to shoot, and his draw length was probably 3 inches too short. He was clear out here at a bent elbow, and he was still like 3 inches away from his nose, his string was, and he's kind of like sighting through and hammers the trigger and whatever else. The guy probably bought the bow off of eBay or a buddy or yard sale or whatever else. Yeah. And so, I'm not trying to sales pitch toward your pro shop in particular, but toward pro shops in general. Archery, performance archery, folks.
At least today.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
But no,
there's a lot of good
seriously,
pro shops,
even just that setup, because a lot of guys will get into archery. They get it, they inherit it like I did from my dad, in terms of both equipment and also technique. Right?
Is he taller and better looking? I hope
he is way better looking than I am.
Okay.
But that's not hard, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, you inherit this stuff, and you don't always wind up going to somebody who can really help you with that technique. So, like I said, if you find yourself anywhere along this conversation today, you find yourself struggling with your archery game. I mean, I shared this with you this morning at a local gym here where I work out. A good friend, excellent bow hunter, excellent hunter, very capable individual, just confessed that he has like debilitating target panic, and he's trying to figure out what to do about it. So that's where your pro shop can come in and help you immensely.
Well, there's a couple of things that go into really being a good archery shot, which is important. If you're not to have that foundation of a good archery shot, you're not going to be a successful bow hunter, and it's not going to be better on animals than it is on targets. So, you need to have the bow fit you correctly. Then you're going to get the basics. So we teach people the basics of the shot. You're going to be getting your shoulder right. Make sure the draw lengths come back. They're not leaning back too far. Shoulder's not high. Grip, of course, is important. And we usually start them with an index finger release just because it's safe, it's easy. They're not going to let go of it. And we try to make sure that you can shoot an index finger release correctly.
Right.
If you have the discipline to shorten it up enough and use your back and pull through it and hook around it. Most people lengthen it out as long as they can, put it on the end of their finger. They think they're shooting, a handgun or something. And then their arm is straight as can be, and they're trying to lock it. And all those things, self-taught, are going to create an issue where most people are not going to be able to shoot well.
Right.
Some people's personalities are pretty good where they can get a controlled punch in and shoot, and they have good mental discipline. They can shoot fairly well, but the other 99.9% of us can't.
Right.
So then we say, okay, once you get to a certain point, and if you're doing this with your finger like you've done your whole life with shotguns and rifles and handguns, you're going to start doing it with the trigger when the pin's on the target. You have to have a shot process. So we teach them a shot process. Here's your stance. Here's your grip. Set your shoulder. Get your anchor point. Now it's hooking the finger, and you're engaging the rhomboid and just pulling straight back with your elbow, and you focus on the spot, not the pin.
Yep.
And all that stuff makes it happen by shooting the bow correctly. You'll get the result. Then putting the pin on the target, trying to hold it there and squeeze it, and you're going to get panic for sure.
Right.
Yeah. So what we do is like, okay, once you get to this point, we have personal and private instruction available. We'll spend time with you. We give you a couple of free days of shooting anyway. Once you get to a certain point where we go, okay, you got the good basics down, and you're shooting the index finger good, and you're using your back to an extent, then we can maybe go to a thumb button.
Right.
And then once you get to a thumb button, you got to adjust it correctly so that the person, I like to get it to where their index fingers on their thumbs on their index finger and the barrel's in the back of their thumb.
Yep.
So they're not resting on it because they have a tendency when they start pulling to punch it, and then they do this decoration thing where it looks like they're John Dudley, but they're really not. Yeah. They go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the delayed look.
Yeah, so you can put it there and relax, and then just get into your back and pull with your elbow straight back and just concentrate on the spot and let the pin float and let it go into it. and when they pull through it, they can do that. I have them usually trained with a Saunders firing line, which has got some tension on it and a cable and stuff, and you can actually like dry fire. It's a really good release training aid. And then I usually get them to, shoot that quite a bit so that they're actually shooting when they're at the office. They can do it.
Yep.
They can go home. They don't have a range at their house. They can do it at night. There's no excuse for not shooting and getting the repetition. So you need to do a lot more current, reps often is better than loading up on Sunday and doing 200 shots.
Yep, right.
It's better to do, 5 days of 40 shots or, 4 days of 50
even
shots.
5 shots a
Yeah,
day.
not every day. Sometimes you need a mental break, or a handful and make them all count. And the key is to only shoot good arrows. If you start getting messed up and the wind's blowing you around, or you're thinking about something else, like you're thinking you got to do a podcast with some knucklehead, you start making it interesting. And then, you start losing the shot, take your thumb off, let it down. Way better than having a bad shot sequence ingrained in there too.
Yeah.
So once you get the shooting down, competing, get your bow dialed in where you're shooting really good, then shooting 3D tournaments is going to be the closest thing you have to a pressure situation that's going to be close to hunting.
And that's because
still
there's
not.
competition.
You're shooting with your buddies.
Performance anxiety.
You're going to want to score good.
You're shooting with a guy like Bob Fromme. He's talking trash in your ear.
I might talk a little, I might intimidate them a little, but only if they're not if they're at the same level
Right.
or better.
Yeah.
Then I'll try to maybe put a little pinch on them. But if they're not, I'm going to bring them up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I won't do anything that's not too below the belt, but maybe subtle. So you get to where you're wanting to outshoot your buddy. You're making you only have 1 or 2 arrows depending on the tournament. You got to score at the end of the day you're turning in. That makes you focus, makes it so you have to have confidence in your bow setup and in your shots execution, and you're going to blow a few and you're going to go, okay, I need to improve this. And then the better you do at 3Ds, shooting at unmarked distances is great. And then learn to use your rangefinder after, maybe, if some of them have rangefinder options. I like to estimate the yardage. Almost all the tournaments I ever won, I was never the best shot, but I was really good at estimating yardage.
Right.
So those are the ones that I like to shoot.
Yeah. Stack the deck.
The guy that could shoot the 530, field rounds, unmarked, I could beat him. But on a field round, he'd smoke me.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty good at estimating yardage. And that carried over into hunting well. But you're also not shooting at a bullseye. You're shooting at behind the shoulder. You got to shoot, at a target that doesn't have an orange spot on it. It's important because a lot of guys see an animal, they don't know where to aim because they're used to shooting at an orange dot.
Right.
You got to figure out a third of the way up behind the shoulder, and then if you can wait to get them quartered away, that's even better if you got enough patience.
Right.
And you can anticipate the animal, what you think they're going to do based on experience.
Yeah, I know. I even, if I don't have the luxury of going to 3D shoots a lot during the year, I'll shoot a lot of blank. Like I'll turn my target face and either paint it jet black or like tan or something like that, and aim center of mass a lot or where I need to be aiming as opposed to aiming at a dot, because it is a different experience.
I got a big 48 by 48 block in the back room. It's like in a little shooting bin, and I take them back there and make them close their eyes.
Yep.
Because when you take the pin and the target and trying to hit the bullseye out of the equation and just try to get them to work on thinking about shooting the bow right, it happens. A lot of the pros do that, blank bail shooting. It's the anxiety of hitting the bullseye that causes people to punch the trigger when the pin gets close.
Right.
Because if you learn a shot sequence and get taught properly and have discipline and practice, you'll have a shot sequence, and then you'll pull the pin up. You estimate, what you're going to shoot it for before you pull the bow up. You can't be going, it's 40 or 50 yards and be somewhere around there.
Right.
Yeah, you get the pin set, pull back, and then you just concentrate on shooting the shot the way it's supposed to be shot that you practice, and the arrow will go there.
Yep. Well, and I know, when it relates to the progression again, that at some point in time, most new archers get to a point where they start becoming competitive with themselves or with other people, to the point we're talking about, and that's when a lot of these wheels start coming off the bus, right?
I tell them not to shoot with their buddies for dollars or ping pong balls at 40 yards because that's going to make it worse.
Right.
Stay close. What I do is I like a square. I actually paint a square on my targets. I like them real targets, like shoot their bag targets, and they got really good foam targets like their high roller. And I'll paint a square bullseye instead of a little dot because it's easy for me to hold the pin inside of it.
Right.
So that makes, because a lot of you're wanting the prize, which is the bullseye. So it's hard for us not to get over that.
Right.
Oh, that's right. This way, that right?
Yeah.
Now that I'm shooting left-handed.
We're going to talk about that here in a second.
Yeah, I was right-handed for third. Now it's left-handed. So when it's easier for me to hold the pin inside of a square. It's pretty easy, and I'll hold it in the center.
All right.
If I'm trying to hold on a small dot that the pin's covering up, it causes me, to be a little bit tighter and slow down, my pull through. And if you hold too long, you're not going to get that extension and follow through if you're too worried about the aiming.
Right.
And it's hard not to do that as a human that wants a reward or has a goal of hitting the spot. If you're trying to hit the spot, you're not going to shoot the bow right. If you shoot the bow right, you're going to hit the spot once you adjust. If it's grouping,
the other factors.
I tell the guys, I can adjust the bow if you're grouping it, but if the loose nut behind the string isn't doing the same thing twice correctly, that's repeatable under pressure, it's hard to adjust the bow.
That's a moving target.
Yeah, so a lot of guys want to buy this and that for their bows, and some of the things will help, but some of the stuff can be anti-productive too if you get too many things that aren't functional in a hunting situation, aren't going to maybe hold up, or it's just too many steps for them to actually apply it under pressure and be lethal with their bow in a kill area.
Right, absolutely. So if I'm starting to fight that a little bit, like you said, blank bail shooting, also like maybe changing the aiming configuration. I too do that. I don't like aiming at a dot. And I've talked to other really good hunters that are like, well, you're just you're handicapping yourself by not teaching yourself to still aim at that dot. I'm like, well, there's never been a dot on an animal I've aimed at. So
no, you're focusing on a spot. It's the same thing. If there's a square, I'm focusing on the center of it, but I'm not stressed about it. And it's more realistic. I paint it black around like a wider area. Usually that stands out good to me. And that to me will be more like picking a spot on an animal,
right,
because it's a little bigger box. It's not huge,
right,
but it's enough where I can shoot back at long range, and maybe I'll have a smaller one that I shoot at, say, 30 to 40 or 50 yards.
Right.
And then I get 60 to 80, I'll have a bigger one, so it's easier to hold in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah, and I get a big enough target where I'm not worried about losing a $20 arrow.
Right.
If I miss the target, so I can shoot the bow right. I'm not stressing about it.
Extra psychological burden when you're at full draw.
What I want to do is I want to shoot a lot of really good arrows, and when I'm shooting good, I keep shooting reps.
Yep.
Just like when I played tennis, I played competitive tennis my whole life. I'm on the ball machine hitting balls, even though I hit 20 good forehands in a row. I want to keep doing it until I'm too tired to do it right.
Right.
Or not be able to concentrate, because I'm just ingraining muscle memory.
Yep.
That's going to pay off later in a stressful situation, which is exactly shooting a bow. If all you know is good shots, under pressure, you pull back, you do through your stuff, pull through the shot. That's all you know how to do. That's what you're going to do.
Right.
So,
yeah, I frequently remind myself and other new archers or people that I'm working with that when you learn to reward yourself for what happens at the bow instead of what happens at the target, you can truly become a good archer.
Yeah.
It has, whatever happens at the line is what's going to make the difference down the line. And too many people will punch the trigger and wind up with an arrow in the bullseye and have effectively made a crummy shot, but they'll pat themselves on the back because it was in the bullseye, and vice versa, where you can be at the line and make a really good form shot and still be out, but you can still say that was a good shot.
Right.
And pat yourself on the back. And I think it's hard to do because, again, you said humans, we want to reward ourselves based on the target.
Yeah, a lot of times the guys will do that and they'll punch. Look, I hit the spot. I'm like, it wasn't a good shot. I don't care.
Yep.
Because that's not going to be good later just because you hit the bullseye.
And it's going to get worse when it's a screaming bull elk.
Oh, way worse.
To that
Some of the shots, I'm like, how did I pull that off?
Right.
But what I tell myself, always the initial, responses that most people want to do is they want to rush the shot and hurry up and make the shot, or the animal's going to spook, or I want to hurry up and kill it. The key is to take a little bit more time and then tell yourself that if I pull through the shot right, I go through all the steps and I make the shot right, it's going to be the result that I want.
Right.
I'm going to kill this animal if I go through it and I make a good shot and don't grab it.
Yep.
Or the pin's there and I go through my shot process. So once you get disciplined enough with that, which most people won't do. I've got a couple students, and I'll do it for free, but I don't usually teach lessons. But if I got some key guys that are like friends that are dedicated, it's rewarding to me to get them to that point where they want to go on good hunts. They're buying equipment. They're like all in on bow hunting, and they want to take it to the next level. Then I'll put time in. I have guys that come down 2 or 3 hour drives once a week, and I'll work with them, and they're good customers, and they're not worried about buying. I don't sell them gear they don't need.
Right.
But they're not. They're they're loyal.
Should we post your cell number on this podcast, Bob?
I got a few guys that have that, but yeah, when they start calling up on Sunday and saying they were on Archery Talk and ask me questions about something that some guys, some plumbers, have some type of input on that they're experts now. I'm like, is that guy? He's a plumber, and he could be a good shot, but it doesn't mean you should maybe do what he's doing. It might work for him.
Well, and I think that's a super important segue. I wanted to touch on this when I was talking about the importance of a good pro shop. I wanted to talk about the lack. There's no barriers to entry to being an expert in any field anymore, right? With social media and YouTube and everything else, anybody who decides they want to make themselves a name and gets viral for some way, shape, or form can be the new expert in the field. And there's a lot of noise in archery in particular as I look around. You mentioned Archery Talk. I see a lot of it on there. I see a lot of it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different noise that is so equipment-centric and very little noise that is form and mental management system specific, etc.
It takes a lot more discipline than to have an attitude. Like somebody has an impression or an attitude on equipment or, what they like. And I watch some of these, reviews, and I'm like, oh, cool, I'm going to learn something here. And I'm like, holy crap, what's that guy doing?
I learned what not to do.
Yeah, like, oh, yeah. So, but there is a lot of knowledge. The one thing about a good thing and bad thing about the customer base now is that there is more knowledge than ever.
Yes.
Which is a good thing.
Right.
As long as it comes from the right place.
Yeah.
So I tell guys, hey, if you want to listen to if you want to go get some solid stuff from guys that are really good and they communicate well and they can back it up, Levi Morgan
mm-hmm.
and John Dudley
yep.
have really good stuff that's solid, right? But if you just go on the internet and get stuff and they think they're doing what those guys are doing, they're not. Usually they get some knowledge about it, but they're not doing the same thing. There's no substitute for personal attention from a qualified person.
Right.
And like I say, qualified. Coaching. A lot of guys go to the range and their buddy tries to help them, and
right.
they mean good, but they're not necessarily how to teach them right.
Right.
So we can take a guy that got a bow from somebody. It happens all the time. Like, a guy comes in, got a free bow, and the guy is 27-inch draw, and the guy's 6'3".
Right.
Usually it's the other way around. So,
right. It's usually too long.
Yeah. Usually
they're wrapping it around the back of their ear.
5'6", and he's got a 31-inch draw.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't adjust it, and it's an older bow, and you try to help them. But, we adjust them if we can. And sometimes an older bow is a great way to start,
Right.
It gets you into the sport. But if you don't have the right draw length, the right weight you can handle, arrow rest isn't proper, right arrow spine, loops in the right place, the peep's important, all those things. But tying it together with, it just depends on how good a guy wants to be. It's just like any sport. The guys that are really good at golf, they're not self-taught.
They have a coach.
Well,
they get multiple coaches.
They get clubs that fit them right.
Yep.
And they get coached, and they have mental things to go through, and they sit on the range and hit millions of balls. Yep. They're not like 99% of the guys that go out there and have a good time golfing, but their scores will never be over, better than what 90s or 100s or whatever they are.
Or 200s.
This one guy is like shooting. I'm like, hey, you know how to get shooting his bow, right? He's trying to get good at Vegas. I go, you know how to get a way higher score? I go, you should take up golf. Your scores will be astronomically high.
Swing and a miss.
Based on experience.
Yeah. No, I think that when it comes down to that side of things, a lot of times we want to use equipment as maybe the excuse. I see guys fiddling with their sights on the range all the time when you're on a shoot or whatever else, and it's always like something's off, and they don't acknowledge that it's them. Right. And I think that's the biggest thing we can do for ourselves is be super humble about the fact that as a human we're kind of a frail mental midget. Can I say that? I guess I'm going to say it.
I don't know. Is that
all too often?
We get away with a little more in Utah than we can in California.
Yes, exactly.
A short person.
You're in Utah. Welcome.
Yeah, vertically challenged, whatever you want to say.
But no, you get we are pretty weak mentally for the most part, and
there's a thing called an ego. I think
ego. Yes.
I think I've been accused of that once in a while. There's a fine line between confident and cocky, right, and humble, and all those things. There's no excuse for arrogance.
Right.
But it depends on who's calling what, and from where it comes from. Sometimes it's jealousy. Like some of my friends, like Cameron Haynes. Nobody works harder than that dude.
No.
And and he's been great for the sport. But he's got some haters. Because he's good at what he does, and it's because he's worked his butt off. And he's passionate about it.
And he doesn't make any apologies.
No, and he's a self-promoter. And he's done a great job with it. It's worked for him.
Right.
Not everybody's personality, you know, that to be
Right.
wired that way, but it's worked really good for him and our sport, you know.
Right. Right. Well, so let's say that we want to talk equipment a little bit deeper. There's kind of a big craze going on right now around arrow weights, FOC, stuff like that. We might as well drag that one up because that is a pretty hot topic in the archery world right now. Talk to me a little bit about your take on that.
Well, the first thing I do is like bow-wise. Okay, a lot of guys want, you know, like they think because it's got 360 foot a second IBO that it's the best bow to buy. You know, and there's some guys that can benefit from a hot shooting bow. Maybe a guy that's limited draw length. Maybe a guy that's got limited, you know, draw weight that he can pull. He can benefit from a bow that's kind of, you know, it's a little
shorter
faster.
brace height,
Shorter
built
brace
for
height.
speed.
Right. It's going to be a little more aggressive cam.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get the energy he needs to hunt elk or something like that. But for the most part, if you're, you know, 28 to 30 inch draw, 28 to 29 and a half is pretty much 27 and a half to 29 and a half is going to be 90% of your guys.
Yep.
And most guys can shoot between 60 and 70 pounds. You don't need more than that with these new bows. You know, I'm guilty of shooting heavy draw weight my whole life. You know, 95
Still?
pounds for 𝗙cie𝗶𝗆. Well, I shot like when we were shooting the bows, you know, back in the day, it was 80 pounds was like what you did, right?
Right.
But they had 9-inch brace heights and round wheels and everything
Yeah.
else, and you still had, you know, heavy aluminum arrows, and they weren't very fast.
Yep.
And no rangefinders.
Right.
I didn't
right.
shoot with a peep for 25 years.
Right.
Fingers, corner of your mouth, let it fly, and yeah, no rangefinder is one of the probably the most impressive things that, you know,
Hands
really.
down.
Yeah,
Change the game.
That's to change it for, especially for most people. Even I use it as much as I can, but getting a bow that's going to be proper for what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I like to get a bow that's got the right blend so that you don't have. There's always diminishing, you know, benefits from one end to the other, like too fast, too slow.
Yep.
Get a bow that's got good speed. If you're on the, you know, at 330 to 340 is kind of like for a high-end
IBO
bow.
speed rating.
Good speed, yeah. And then get an axle to axle that's appropriate for your size and what kind of hunting you're wanting to do.
Yep.
You know, if you're 5'7" and you're hunting white-tailed deer 30 yards and under and turkeys, like 85% of the country, 27-inch, you know, 28-inch Matthews kicks butt.
Yep.
If you're 6 foot, like we are, like 6 foot or something, you're 29-inch draw. And you're shooting mule deer at longer ranges and competing at 3D, and you want to maybe practice out far so your effective range, you know, for hunting is, you know, stretching it out in whatever it is, that 50, 60 range instead of being, you know, pigeonholed down into a 30-yard shot.
Right.
You know, you're going to want a bow that's got a little longer axle to axle, at least a 6-inch brace height, 6.5, somewhere in there, a smoother cam. You know, like I shoot a Hoyt Carbon RX5 Ultra. And I like a little bit longer bow. I'm old school from when we had the bows.
Yep.
A short bow was 41 inches.
Right.
now they're 27. You know,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
what happened? Fingers to release, right? So things have, you know, got shorter, more parallel, you know, more aggressive cams, faster, all that stuff. But usually we're selling a lot of bows in that 31, like say a V3 31 Matthews has been one of our best-selling bows. We're super strong with Hoyt. Hoyt makes incredible product. We sell their aluminum bows. They've got Venom 30, 33. The Venom 33 this year is crazy specs.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the RX5. We sell a high percentage of carbon bows because of our area and the fact that our shop is known for being kind of technical.
Right.
And we have tons of accessories too. So when a guy does come on to buy a high-end bow, he wants to set up right. He wants to have options on all the different accessories. And he wants to leave with it shooting perfect and it's timed. And we do the America's Best Bowstrings, and I've got a really good tech, you know, and we're going to follow it up too. We give them a couple free days afterwards. We build a really good custom arrow, which is part of it too. But they need to have the right equipment. And then if they're going to be hunting, you know, more deer, you know, antelope, maybe turkeys, you don't need a 500 plus grain arrow. You're going to be, you know, shooting right through them. Let's just take our average guy, 28, you know, inch draw, 65 to 70 pounds. Usually we're shooting at 350 to 300 spine, depending on the bow and the length and the point weight and all that stuff. But we're usually in that 420 to 440 range.
Yeah. As far as
total
finish,
arrow weight.
total arrow weight.
Yeah, total arrow weight. As far as weight up front, I'm a VAP guy, Victory VAP. Have from day one. You have to have a 50 grain insert at least to make it strong enough up front for that 166 ID micro diameter. I like the benefit of the penetration, get another 20% penetration.
And you're talking about the micro diameter of the overall size of the shaft.
Yeah, and then you got a 50 grain insert on there and then a 100 grain point. I've tried 125 grain points because when you add 25 grains to the point, it makes that broadhead so much stronger.
Yep.
And as you know,
yep.
being a broadhead manufacturer for years. But everybody has this love affair with 100 grains, and they'll add, 75 grains to the insert and 100 grains to the head. And they got 175 up front. Would it be better to do 50 grain insert that's strong with 125 grain head, which is way stronger when you add 25 grains to the broadhead than to have all that weight in the insert?
Yeah, because it beefs up the ferrule and usually the blade thickness and all kinds of things.
You're not going to have the broadhead fail, which is what's killing the animal, which most of the 100 grains now are built pretty dang good.
Yeah, they really are.
It's amazing that they've done what they've done, but guys are paying more so they can put better, stainless. They put 70-75 aluminum. They can put titanium, and they're testing the heck out of them. It's a tough category, so if you don't have a good head, and the guys are shooting them through steel and gel and wood and everything else, and they see that on the internet, you're not going to really sell. And I'm not going to push anything that doesn't work well.
Right.
But it's there's a lot of good heads out there, and I've used over the years. So fixed blade is kind of what I like if a guy's going to be hunting big pigs, elk. I like a lot of guys kill all those things with mechanicals.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about overall my confidence factor.
I like fixed as well.
Yeah, and you can get them to fly good.
Yeah.
Grim Reaper has like head in every category. It's crazy, and they're made in the U.S. They're a really good company, good people to deal with, but they have U.S. steel. It's not sourced out to the least expensive vendor in China.
Right.
And it's heat treated in the U.S. So the heat treating, they can be sharp, but if it's not good steel and it's not heat treated right, it doesn't retain sharpness. You have to shoot through something to get to the vitals. And if it doesn't retain the sharpness, you're not going to kill the animal as clean as you could with something that's still sharp.
Yep.
So I like Grim Reaper. They have 1 3/8 mechanical. I shoot a deer. I hunt eastern Colorado. Alex Nestor, he's a kick butt outfitter. I hunted with Jeremy Fiskus, who was great. That's where I go for my big mule deer. There's a lot of them. It's not the most scenic experience, but I like an 1 3/8 mechanical because I'm shooting long range.
And
there's no cover.
Crosswinds.
Crosswind with a small diameter arrow. I'm shooting through those deer. I'm shooting 75 pounds left-handed now.
Mm-hmm.
I got plenty of energy with a 300 spine arrow. My arrows are in that 430 for like open country. I use a VAP Elite and a VAP TKO Elite, which is got a different wrap, a little stronger, but still micro diameter arrow. I use that for elk and pigs. It's only 20 grains heavier. Has a little more punch. And what I've seen is a lot of the arrows, if you go from a 425 grain arrow to a 450, even with a 4-fletch, I prefer a 3. At 40 yards and under, there's very little difference.
Right.
But when you get 50 plus, big difference.
Yep.
So if I'm shooting at
even way more if you add another 100 grains, if you go to 525 and 600 plus grains, which there is kind of a craze afoot around that.
Well, so a lot of guys are wanting, FOC, 𝗙cie𝗶𝗆, awesome. If you need penetration, awesome. If you're shooting white-tailed deer and you're hitting them in the shoulder for some reason,
aim further back.
It might help a little bit, but you're still hitting the shoulder, which is not usually a kill area. You hit an elk in the shoulder, you need to shoot back into that 200 cubic inch area that's called the lungs, and then they die pretty good. But there is some pluses to 40 and under. Well, say a guy hunting whitetail again. We go back to that because that's what most people do. You're shooting a 2-inch range with an Easton FMJ arrow, which is extremely heavy. And at 30 yards and under, the bow's quiet as can be because it's absorbing all the energy with that arrow weight. Say it's 500 grains on a 340 spine or whatever with 100 grain, hypodermic on it or something. It's absorbing the energy from the bow, making it quiet, and you have a heavy arrow with lots of momentum, pushing a broadhead that's really blunt, because it's 2 inches and it's going to be 100 grain. They can't sweep it back and have enough metal to keep it at 100 grains and make a 2-inch cut. So your blade angle and cutting diameter have a lot to do with penetration. And so you're crushing whitetail.
It's a great setup in that case.
Yeah, it's awesome. You shoot a FMJ with a hypodermic and you get a broadside shot, and it blows through ribs and everything else out, and even if you're back in the liver a little bit, it's great for marginal shots, rutting deer. Most guys are self-taught, they do this. They buy their bows at a box store of some sort, or they get a bow from a friend, and their buddy knows what they're doing, but doesn't really know what he's doing, and they don't seek professional help. Or the pro shop, a lot of them do the best they can, but when you're busy, it's hard, and a lot of them aren't set up, well at a high level to take care of people that want to get to the next level. That's an issue too.
Right.
I'm not going to say every pro shop is the answer.
They're not all created equal.
No, just like anything. Some of them are understaffed. A lot of them aren't super knowledgeable technically, and a lot of them maybe don't know how to teach people correctly. So you have to search that out. So if you want to be really good, a lot of times you have to find the right place. And there are some good pro shops, across the nation, and there are some that maybe aren't as good as other, but there's still a way better place to start than most places as far as getting the draw link, getting set up. And if you need to take it to the next level, then your shop doesn't have those things. You can usually search it out and find some place that does.
Right. Yeah, I usually say as it relates to arrow weight that a really good test for you to understand, like if you're going to go hunt elk and you're not necessarily going to have an exact yardage, you're going to anticipate this bull's coming through that opening. I zapped that tree. I think it's 46 yards, and it turns out to be 49 or 51. I encourage people to, you can even do this with just progressively heavier field tips just to play with it a little bit. Go out and shoot at your target at, say, 50 or 60 yards and just aim with the wrong pin and see how far off you are at 5 yards of missing it, at 10 yards of missing it. It'll blow your mind how bad a heavy arrow will miss, how quickly it drops off.
Well, that's what I do for a test. I go to 60 yards, which I can shoot pretty dang good at 40. I can test my bows really well at 40 where I can tell whether the bow's tuned right. I tune them so that they're shooting. I paper tune it. I shoot bear shaft, which I don't really like to tell customers because that's really hard if a guy's torquing it.
Yep.
It's real sensitive with a bear shaft, and I shoot broadheads as the ultimate test. So if you're shooting a paper tear 1,000 times and one's going this way and that way, it's probably just, it's good. Now fine tune your broadheads and get it consistent. Like, when you shoot out it good and when you didn't. Get a consistent, group of it's high right, low left, whatever it is, and maybe micro tune it from there.
Right.
And there's a lot to micro-tune depending on the bow. Some of them have yokes like the 𝗀cie did. Now they've got shims, a different cam system. Everybody wants to move the rest all over the place. But if it's way off from where its factory should be set, like where our guys notice at them,
right,
then it's usually something wrong.
Yeah, like on Matthews, they have that top hat system now, which I really like because if your rest is way off, don't move the rest. Or, if the tear is bad.
13/16, it should be there, and if it's not, shim it.
Yeah. Move. And again, that's a pro shop job.
Well, if you put these new bows on the wrong press, you can hurt yourself really bad. They're like a freaking hand grenade. And if you have the wrong press, it can shoot the bow up or down.
Yep.
Some people have been injured, in that situation, so you don't want to be messing with that yourself. Arrow rest, we have a lot of guys, they're torquing the bow and punching the grip, and then they're tweaking the rest, and then it's so far off from where we set it originally, where it was paper tuning in the back for us, that we had to reset everything. And sometimes the strings, like on these old bows now, it's like they're almost all 2 cams of some sort, or a hybrid, or binary, or whatever it is, because they're smoother and faster.
Right.
But if they get out of time, it can be one twist. Whether if it's behind on the top, the bottom's hitting first, it's not so good. If they're both hitting the same, it's good. The top hits a little bit before the bottom, it's okay. But one twist a lot of times can make a difference if your arrow's high or low.
Right.
Left or right, a lot of times hand torque.
Right.
You start bolting all this stuff on the side of the bow, and
again,
put a little pressure on it.
That hand torque comes down to ego again a lot of times, like being coachable and recognizing that, hey, this might be me. If Bob's shooting a perfect bullet hole out of this bow and he hands it to me, and all of a sudden I'm shooting a 2-inch left-hand tear, maybe I'm the problem.
Well, most people are going to grab it like they grab a handgun or a hammer.
Yeah.
And that's not the right way to hold a bow. So there it goes back to getting a start. They do what's comfortable and what makes sense to them.
Right.
And what makes sense to people that are self-taught is like the opposite of good form.
Right.
And it's just what's comfortable.
Yep.
And you can get to a certain degree of comfort and accuracy, and you'll have some type of zone that you've killed some deer or done whatever, and it might be 30 yards and under, and once in a while at 40, but you're really not being as good as you can possibly be.
I think that's the big question.
And if you're not trying to improve all the time, you're going backwards.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows, no matter how good you are. Tom Brady's always trying to get better.
Yeah.
Roger Federer, whoever it is, whatever sport. If you're not trying to improve, that's one of the reasons I changed to left hand. You know,
Well, I was just going to say that, like, maybe some listeners are like, well, who's Bob Fromme to tell me this? And it's one of the most inspiring stories in archery that I've heard because, A, you've killed every species of North American big game with a bow. One of a handful of guys that have done that, right? So 29 different animals, in addition to I don't even know how many others. I wouldn't want to count. But you've hunted every North American species with a bow successfully, I might add. And you're right-handed and slightly right-eye dominant?
I'm definitely right eye, but my left eye is not that much weaker.
Yeah.
And I can close my right eye.
Mm-hmm. But you struggled with some of these same issues we're talking about, and you decided, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to shoot left-handed,
well, there's a couple,
which is a full send move.
Like people ask me,
so
and I'm
talk
like,
us through that a little bit.
Why did I tell them that I shoot left-handed and I used to shoot right? Because it opens up a whole story, right? So shot right-handed forever, shot heavy bows, overbuilt on one side, rhomboid, neck's always like I couldn't even turn my neck, you know, so it's, you know, just imbalanced, you know, muscularly.
You look like a fiddler crab.
I should have been
one
doing
giant
this.
claw and one little claw.
Well, I wasn't, imbalanced in a lot of different ways. But, you know, I wasn't doing, my cross training was, once I started surfing more like I did when I was a kid, it helped even out my muscular structure, but I wasn't doing like weights.
Right.
So tennis and surfing is my kind of like my CrossFit thing.
Right.
So I'm not a gym guy like you. You know, I'm surprised you can go every day and not have girls. You know, that's why you go so early, probably so they're not drooling all over you. And
yeah, I try to stagger it with Ruthie so that she doesn't have to witness it. It's hard on her.
Yeah, I just hate to see the little girls get beat up by her.
Yeah.
And then you afterwards.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe that's, you know, part of the challenge. But yeah, I shot right-handed forever. I shot fingers forever.
Yep.
All the bows, you know, like the evolution of archery, the bows got shorter, more parallel limbs. Higher let off, which is not conducive to good finger shooting.
Right.
You know, you need 65%
that pressure.
65% let off to shoot it right. 50 kind of when I started it was like 40 or 50 sucked. 65 is good. Set 80 more, you can't get off the string clean.
Right.
It holds good, but you
it.
can't get off string clean as consistent as you can at 65%. 41-inch bow is about as short as I could shoot. And I've shot some of the Matthews bows really well at 41 inches. But nobody makes those anymore because they're not popular, because you can hook a release on with a high let off, shorter axle bow, faster arrow, shoot more accurate.
Be more accurate right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate, right instantly, right?
Yep.
And out of tree stands, it's, you know, shorter, ground blinds, all that great stuff, which your ground blinds kick ass too.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I say that, Austin? Okay, all right. Kick butt, we'll say. Maybe they'll use that one instead.
Yeah, then you can rephrase it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Splice.
Yeah, in Utah, we'll use kick butt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got to where I wasn't able to practice as much as I wanted because my neck was always wadded up. I'd feel pretty good to go to the chiropractor, he'd grind on me and straighten me out, and I'd pull the bow and shoot it for a session. The next morning I'd be locked up kind of again.
Yeah.
And I wasn't shooting as well with the bows got shorter. And if you got, you know, a sponsor and you want to, you know, in my situation where I've been, you know, doing this forever, going on really expensive hunts, it's nice to have a little help from some sponsors that were, you know, backing up with maybe whatever writing and video, DVD, and now it's all the social media.
And selling a lot of gear in the pro shop,
but
too.
But that number one thing
yeah.
was that they knew that I'm going to sell a huge amount, so they could put a number on,
hey,
if we sponsor Bob and we were doing $50,000, he's doing $200,000 now.
Right.
It's a good investment.
That was a good deal.
A good investment,
for them.
yeah. And it's not like they're giving me a gazillion dollars, you know.
Right.
But all that little bit helps. But I got to where I wasn't shooting as well as I wanted to and as effective as I wanted to. So I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot these bows. I'm going to shoot with a release. So I worked for a month, blind bail, did all the stuff you're supposed to do, right-handed. Shot good for about a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. About the fourth week, I started grabbing the damn thing again.
Yep.
So I'm like,
punching
okay.
the trigger.
Yeah, so I had a friend that actually shot left-handed, and he goes, dude, I changed to left-hand because I had panic. Darren Collins, who's a pro shot shooter, right?
Yeah.
And then my cameraman, Jerry Morrison, too. They switched to left hand for different reasons because I think they messed up the right shoulder.
Right.
So mine was not really an injury, but it was more of an uncomfortable from being balanced. But I was also punchy as heck from shooting fingers forever.
Yep.
And so I switched to left hand. Well, actually, let me tell you real quick.
How long ago now?
Well, just real quick. When I started shooting fingers, and when I won all my tournaments and stuff shooting fingers right-handed, I had a clickety-click clicker, like a string clicker.
Yep.
And it's a little thing that goes on the limb,
yep.
so you don't have to have it, you know, specific to the arrow length like like a guy, the Olympic shooter would shoot. So I'd put the clicker on, so it's just like shooting a back tension release.
Yep.
So you put the pin on the target, and you pull through the clicker with your back, and when it click, I'd let go.
Yep.
And I had it super quiet, so the animals couldn't hear it. But that's when I started winning, state championships and 3D tournaments, and most of the stuff I shot mainly because I could finally shoot with the pin on the target.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could also
now this is still fingers.
Yeah,
and
fingers
right-handed.
I shot fingers for 30 years. I shot 28 of the 29 with fingers.
Oh, wow.
All record book animals and all 29 species, which is another crazy thing that I make harder than it has to be for whatever reason. But, so then I went to left hand. Well, when the bows got to where right-handed, they were short, and they had stops on them. You couldn't pull through the stop. You didn't have a spongy wheel like the old energy wheels. Then it's hard to shoot a clicker.
Right.
So I went to left hand, trained myself. It was just like being a brand new person.
Right.
Which was good and bad. So I didn't have any muscle memory. I'm not left-handed. I'm not as strong that side, but I'm not mentally damaged on that side of the brain. It hasn't been used at all. The other side, I guess your left side is your right. I guess it had been used enough to screw it up.
Yeah.
The right one was like brand new programmable. Like, hey, whatever you want to do, I'll do. And then the muscle memory is like brand new. Let's do it.
Right.
But now I'm like a brand new person that has knowledge of how to shoot, but has zero muscle memory left-handed.
Right.
So putting the arrow on and 55 pounds was like, just like a new guy.
Everything was uncomfortable.
Yeah, so I built up, and I think the first year, and then my left eye isn't quite as strong, but it was clear. And at low light condition, I didn't see that well. I went pig hunting, I think I started shooting in February. I went in May. I had a African hunt in June with Tom Miranda's. And I pulled back on this pig, a black pig, and getting low light and a shadows in a bush, and I'm like looking through the peep and make sure where the pig is, and I'm like, dang, I ended up shooting over him. I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work. So I had my left eye LASIKed for medium distance because I'm a little farsighted, because by the time I did it, I was in my 40s.
Right.
Or 50s, whatever. It's like now that I'm 100, I can't remember that far back. But, so I got to where I got my left eye LASIK for mid-range, and that helped my night vision. And so I don't need to wear, I had, Oakley sunglasses on that were actually prescription on some of my hunts, like that bear hunt on Kodiak. Mm-hmm. I have those on, and guys are like, what are you wearing those Oakleys for? Are you trying to look cool? I'm like, nah, so I can see a little better, But I don't need them now because my left eye sees really good, and that's the one I shoot, and I can close my right eye. So I trained myself, but I trained myself how to shoot, did the hook for a while, and I started grabbing that a little. It's like, okay, I can't screw up this side. I'm running out of sides to shoot. Only got two. And started shooting a thumb button. I was good with that. And then I found that when I started training with like a hinge, it totally I got super relaxed. And I could just hold on the target. And I never got to where I got a little nervous and started grabbing it. Started like, pull it and make a fist. Some guys will, even though they got a thumb button, they'll do this. Yeah. They think just because they bought, a thumb button release that somebody really good shoots, that they're going to shoot it good instantly.
Right. Again, it's not about equipment.
Or they think they're doing like their buddy on the video. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so I learned to shoot the thumb button, but then I went to the hinge, and that's where I really just started. You have to be disciplined on it.
Yep.
And if you don't shoot hinge right, if you grab it, it's going to be all over. But if you shoot it right, you can get a really good rhythm, and it makes.
So do you hunt with a hinge now?
Yeah, I actually have like a Scott. It's a Longhorn, so it's kind of a combo.
Yeah, I shoot a
What
Longhorn.
I found is that when I held on to it, it made me tense, like holding a handheld. And this draws with a strap, and it also makes it so that I can be really close to where it needs to go off. Because a lot of hinges, if you don't pull them right, they'll go off and punch you in the face. But if you also get too safe, you've got so far to go that you're taking forever to set the shot up. So it's like I'm real close. I get it there. I actually have a little click on it. That means I get set in my anchor, it clicks, and I know I'm right there. Then I just start pulling with my elbow straight back, which engage my back muscle. But if I tell people pull their elbow straight back, it usually gets them to pull, use
get the right motion.
Yeah, so they don't know what to do with their back, right? I go, tighten up your rhomboid, and I poke it with my finger.
Yeah.
And
I get behind them. I poke their rhomboid.
Yeah, well, that'd be a trick unless they're really short. And then I get them to shift it to their elbow, and then that gets that engaged, and then just have them pull their elbow straight back against my hand, and that usually gets them to do the right thing.
Right.
And then I tell, okay, now judge your follow through. If you come back and you're flexing your bicep like you do every morning in the mirror, you're doing it right. If it pulls off to the side or your bow comes down here,
Right.
then you didn't do right. The bow flows into the target, and
Yep.
your arm comes straight back, then you had the right pressure.
Right. Right.
Because you can, pull it off the side and do all kinds of stuff wrong too, and still think you're using back tension. But
Right.
so that was kind of the natural progression. Now is every year I just shot what was comfortable. The first year I think when I went to Africa, I was shooting 65 pounds. It took me 6 months to get up to that, and now then I'm like 70, 72. Now I'm shooting 75 with the Hoyt's so smooth. It's a longer axle to axle bow. I just shoot where I'm comfortable with a bow, where I can draw it and shoot 50 arrows good, and I can let it down easy.
Yep.
I'm not, I don't want a guy doing
Not
all
sky
this.
drawn.
What do you shoot? I got to shoot what you shoot, or 1 pound more. Now, just shoot what you shoot comfortable and make it accurate. It's more about where you put the arrow than how much energy you have. Because with even with gals, I've had 2 women in the last couple of years draw good tags. One in Arizona, one in New Mexico, and they both killed 6-point bull elk. They were shooting 47 and like 46 pounds. They're like 26.5-inch draw, small diameter VAP arrow with a fixed blade Grim Reaper micro Hades, a smaller one.
Yep.
Super sharp, 50 grain insert on the front of that VAP, and both of them shot, like 30-yard shots, shot where the broadhead was sticking out the other side of the elk.
Nice.
Yeah, they shot them where they're supposed to.
Yep.
Both 6-point bulls.
Yeah.
And the bulls ran less than 100 yards.
Yep. It's awesome. Again.
And they weren't shooting, 500 grain arrows at 80 pounds or anything.
Right. And sky drawn to get there.
Shooting them and having, I've seen it where guys are shooting, too big of mechanicals sometime, and they hit a bunch of angle on a bunch of ribs.
Yep.
Because that's the other thing, like with a fixed on an elk or a moose, even a grizzly. I know guys, a grizzly bear's pretty soft, really, compared to a big pig. I say the best thing you can test them on is our pigs, or someplace that has pigs where they get the big shields on them, like our 250-pound pigs, up the Central Coast where we hunt quite a bit. Those pigs are tough to get through, tougher than a grizzly bear to shoot through.
Right. Right.
Because it's like cartilage. It's not
Yeah.
hair.
I helped Garth Jensen skin his first giant boar this year and saw that shield for the first time in person. It's unreal. I'd
you
heard
can
about
stab it with a knife and it won't go through.
I heard about it and I kind of pooed it. I was like, how?
That's one of the reasons you shoot them quartering away too.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, a shot angle is really important. We'll
Right.
talk about that. But so I like to shoot fixed blade on big pigs because I know that setup. If I'm shooting 430 to 450 grain arrow with my setup, 300 spine arrow, all that stuff, it's going to go in small diameter. It's going to go all the way through, and I've never had an animal that I didn't recover that was because of poor penetration. It was always because of poor placement.
Yeah, poor shot placement. Exactly.
It's always about placement. So if the arrow's a little flatter shooting, and I'm confident in it, so I shoot a lot at 40, and then I'll go to 60. That's the other thing we got off on different tangents, like have a tendency to do. But when I get really dialed at 40, then I'll go to 60, and that's where you're going to notice that those heavier arrows, I'll put more fletching on my arrow if it's going to help me stabilize my broadhead and it's going to group better at 60. But if there's a diminishing return where a 4 fletch and an extra 30 grains of arrow weight makes that thing, if I come out the bottom of the shot a little bit, it shoots 6 inches low instead of 2 inches low.
Right.
I'm probably not going to shoot that arrow. I'm going to shoot the one that's 2 inches low.
You're in favor of the flatter trajectory.
And then it's in the
that
spot
case.
4 out of 6 times at 60.
Right.
Might be a big spot, but but it's like I know it's good. I've basically earned confidence in that setup, and some of it's based on experience.
Right.
I've shot I don't know how many animals with a 1 3/16 cut 3-blade.
Yep.
Whether it was Thunderhead, Rocky Mountain, or now Grim Reaper, which is superior because it's shortened up and you can shoot it at higher speeds and have it group right. I can shoot that arrow at 285 feet a second, with my 430 or 40 grain arrow, and it groups at 60 yards with 3 fletch, 3-inch medium helical flex fletch Silent Nights. Is one of we do the AE 260 hybrid's a good one. I've had the Vein Tech that Levi shoots. That's a good vein as well. There's a lot of stuff that works. The X vein from Boning, we do a lot because that thing's bulletproof. It's not going to fall off. It's like a blazer material. So there's a lot of stuff. We build custom arrows. We spine index them. We square them. We make sure both ends are squared because the end's got to be squared too. You have a proper nock. Make sure it snaps on the serving, right? Because some strings will have different serving sizes and some nocks fit different. That's important. There's a million different things and little details that will make a difference.
Right.
If you get to a level where you can tell the difference.
Right.
And that has to do with the person getting taught right
and
having
hard work to get
discipline to know the difference instead of just trying to buy the difference.
And I think that's the key, right? That's what we've been talking
Yeah.
about all along, is knowing that, not trying to buy the difference.
Yeah,
or the
trying to
shortcut
buy,
in your
they're
equipment.
trying to buy accuracy, and a lot of times it comes down more to the shooter than it does. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but a lot of it has to do with the passion of the shooter,
Yep.
and his dedication to want to improve. And then at our store, you can get all that stuff if you basically go through the steps to get to where we're going to put the time into you too. We want to make sure you benefit from it,
Right.
because all of our time spent.
Well, and it's a return investment for you guys as well.
Well, for me,
That customer
personally,
will be a customer for life, right?
yeah, we got a lot of I've got
create-
guys that have been buying bows from me for 30 years, and they send their friends. So referrals are super important. But for me, like, the most important thing that I've learned in life is that having good relationships with the right people is really the most important thing. Whether you're hunting with somebody that's fun to hunt with, as opposed to maybe somebody that's a jackass and there's a big animal there. I'd rather go on a good hunt where there's good animals, but I'm going to hunt with somebody that's fun.
Yeah, good time.
Or
as well.
yeah, have a good time, And I made an exception today, but yeah.
Don't talk about Brady that
No,
way.
yeah. Brady's pretty awesome. I still want to stay at his house one more night. So yeah.
We'll behave ourselves then.
Right. Yeah, but you
Yeah.
and I have had a relationship forever, from the trophy taker days. You guys,
Yep.
and we beat on Dan as hard as we could, and you got it through a little bit because you're
Yep.
the buffer zone, but he always made a good product, and finally made it to where, like in a pro shop, like I charge the minimum advertised price is what we sell stuff for. I try to hit everything. So if a customer comes to our store and he price shops, he's getting the best price. He's getting the best service. He's getting the best selection. He's going to get follow-up. He's got a place to shoot. He's going to get hunting information. So for me to make money, I need to buy it good.
Yep.
So I'm spending a ton of time always trying to get products that are the best in every category. But I also have to be able to make a living. I can't, make 25 or 30%. And that's the problem with the industry is a lot of pro shops. The industry's got it set up to where if a guy's not a high volume buyer, or he's not a savvy buyer and doesn't take discounts because he's undercapitalized, or get the shipping and all those things, or he can't put in that much inventory, he can't really make enough margin, for between what he buys it for and what he sells it for to make a good living.
Right.
And I like when I talked to 𝗙cie𝗶𝗆ល់a couple of years ago. I was going to New Mexico. I stopped by, thought it was going to be a half hour. How you doing, Pete? I've known him forever from day one, right? Been in the industry forever. And he was talking about some of the, how many good dealers he had, and a lot of them weren't good, and they didn't pay their bills. I go, well, you know what? Most of this industry is set up for the pro shop guy to fail.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, well, what do you mean? I go, you guys set your prices at like 30%, 25%, and then we got to do all this labor, and then they go down from there.
Right. Yeah.
Then a lot of times guys end up giving their buddies deals or this or that. Or a guy wants a discount because he spent $1,000, even though the bow cost you, $800,
Mm-hmm.
and you spend 2 weeks with them setting it up. So, the guy's got to make a decent margin, or where he can, and the industry has always been set up kind of light. So like Dan was, on that like 25%. It's like, dude, I'd like to sell you rest, but got to make it so I can make a living and justify it,
Right. Right.
Yeah, and you got him there, right? And then business blew up, and it was a good blend. I was impressed with what you were able to do at that company, and run it, and our relationship's been strong from that.
Yeah. No, it's easy. And honestly, I always say that the hunting industry has some of the best people on planet Earth in it. I always feel fortunate to have been a part of it for so long. And like I said, to the extent that archery, budding, aspiring archers, seasoned archers, etc., can take the advice that, like a guy like you who has shown commitment. I mean, you went so far as to get your eye half LASIK'd.
Yeah, my
right?
left eye, not my good one.
Yeah, you went mid-range with it. You switched hands. You switched styles over the years because you were so committed and dedicated to it. And that's kind of approach that has to take, I think, to every archer, and realize that it's worth the hard work and not be afraid of that hard work. But that hard work isn't just reps. It's
They're
good
not
reps.
all
Like
going to
you
be
said,
wired
every
that
good
way.
arrow.
Yeah, they're not going to be wired that way, and some of it to be fun. They just want to shoot and they're good enough to be proficient hitting a pie plate at whatever distance it might be. Well, how come you use stress over 1-inch groups at whatever distance with your rifle, but you're not willing to make yourself better at a bow and do the animal a service you should respect? Shooting an arrow at an animal is a commitment that you should have, and not just be hitting them to where you can make a clean kill, which an arrow is amazingly lethal in the right place.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what we should all strive for,
Right.
because that just helps just being a good person.
Right.
But yeah, as far as a lot of people in the, like we're getting back to pro shops. I mean, there's a lot of guys in the industry, pro shop owners especially, or maybe people that would have had really high jobs, what they could have got paid somewhere in the corporate world. They do it because they love the sport. And most pro shop owners are not good businessmen. And I wasn't, but I wanted to be a better one.
Right.
And so I tried to figure it out, and I hired good people. I have Fane Pittman, who's my general manager, is awesome.
He's top notch.
He's helped me get to the next point because I wasn't born with a computer or phone in my hand.
Right.
I was like a sundial and abacus or whatever. So to get the computer programs to where they are now, and to teach my knothead how to kind of navigate it and be good at it and not screw everything up, and be able to use the forecasting and the numbers and reach out to our customer base and all those things is what gets you to the next level.
Right.
And now my business is, doing numbers I never thought we'd be doing.
Right.
Not back. And I'm able to hire really good guys.
Great.
That's the other part of it. If you don't make money, you can't hire good employees.
Right.
And I have really good employees, so that if they don't have to come Bob. It's not Bob's Archery. It's performance archery. Anybody you get is good.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't necessarily. But if I'm in the office doing something important, and somebody says, "Hey, I'd like to talk to Bob," I'm out there for sure.
Right.
Sometimes it's a friend of mine or somebody referred.
You put on your cape and head out.
Yeah, right. Like more of my walker. Then I get guys that have come from wherever. They might be in San Diego on a vacation, and they came in the store and just want to say hi.
Right. Well, I think the takeaway more than anything else is you need to invest in good gear. Find yourself a good pro shop. But more than anything else, what'd you say? You can't buy accuracy?
Yeah, you got to earn confidence too.
Yeah.
That's why, if you're shooting good, you need to keep shooting good. And you need to shoot often. You can't just pick up your bow in July and middle of July, and you got to you hunt end of August or September.
Right.
And you can, but the chances of having a longer effective range under pressure are a lot slimmer.
Right.
There's talented guys that pull it off, but for the most part, not so much.
Right.
A lot more nightmare stories about misses and what happens when guys miss or they hit something poorly, or then they go back to bass fishing and playing golf or shooting their long-range rifle.
Yep.
Austin.
They blame the broadhead, etc. Well, thanks for listening today. I think we'll wrap this one up. Stay tuned, though. We're going to talk to Bob about some of those 29 North American big game species that you've chased, talk about some of those adventures in another episode of the podcast. So just want to thank you, Bob, for swinging in here and saying hi in Cedar, and for all of your wisdom you've shared today on the podcast.
Well, thank you, buddy, for having me. I know you're going to run out of interesting guests, so I'm glad to come over.
Yeah, you're like 99.
Try to fill in you somewhere where I could. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.